episode is brought to you by A3, a CMMC cloud-based collaborative environment for an organization seeking certification, otherwise known as an OSC, to build CMMC packages and share with a marketplace of consultant RPOs and assessor C3PAOs. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of 123 CMMC. My name is Dana Mantilia, and I will be your host. And today, our guest is Amira Arman. Hello, Amira. How are you?
Hello, hello.
Well, first thing we need to do is we need to congratulate you on finally getting your notification of your provisional instructor.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Yep.
Good. All right, so we're going to talk about a lovely topic today, inheritance in regards to CMMC. So our first question, obviously, is what in the world is inheritance? What does it mean?
All right. So I'm excited to be talking about this topic because there's very little written about it. And it's such a key part of all assessments and part of your cybersecurity for your business. So it comes down to that you as a defense contractor, you as any person in charge of cybersecurity, you are ultimately responsible for the security of your systems. It doesn't matter if you are doing it or somebody else is doing it, you are responsible, right? So if say I had this sensitive CUI document, and I decided, I'm going to give it to Bob and he's going to guard it for me. Well, you should kind of be thinking, okay, can I trust Bob? Like, is Bob going to sell the document to somebody else? Does Bob have a secure house? Right? There's a whole bunch of questions that you should start thinking about. And a lot of people, they're just like, it's Bob's responsibility. Right? I paid him $5 to guard it for me. He should be doing it. Mm-hmm. Right. But when you are doing a comprehensive cybersecurity program, and especially when you're about to get assessed, as part of CMMC, you need to know that Bob is doing all those things, right? Or a cloud provider, a managed service provider, right? Even if you are in a facility that handles some things, for lots of tenants, you have to make sure that they're doing all those things. And that's where we come into this concept of inheritance, where not only do you know what they're doing for you, but you need to be able to prove that they're doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not just from an assessment standpoint. You should be wanting to prove it for yourself because you're responsible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think that, even in the forget CMMC, just the regular small businesses right now, it's, that the IT department, IT guy, he takes care of that. We don't need to worry about any of that. And that is definitely a common theme that I hear quite a bit. So, okay. All right. So what are some examples of inheritance in defense contractors?
So a couple examples are a lot of people use cloud service providers. Office 365, Box. There's even, say antivirus providers like CrowdStrike, Rapid7, I think. There's also some backup providers that they can take your backups and put them up in their cloud, where inheritance is involved. Right? Anytime they have access to your data or you're giving them your data, that's a great example of, where you need to start thinking about inheritance. Another big example of inheritance is anytime you have another organization handling your IT systems or your facility security for you. It's basically anytime you're doing a cybersecurity task or a compliance task, and it's not your employees doing it.
That's the best way. That summarizes it nice and easy so people can understand. That's a very good point. Okay, so here's a question. Talking about cloud providers. If I use a cloud provider to hold CUI files, what CMMC requirement can I inherit from that cloud provider?
So this is where the hard truths start coming in. At CMMC level 3, if you have a cloud provider that's handling CUI for you, the majority of CMMC requirements need to be inherited at least partially from that cloud provider. So at the very, very minimum, right, by definition, a cloud provider is an organization that has servers and network and a data center somewhere else, right, that's not yours. So very, very minimum is they need to be doing facility, the physical protection requirements. They need to do personal screening on their own employees that can get into your stuff from the back end. They need to do, authorization and identity management, again, for their own employees. So it's not really, a set of, oh, well, here's the 5 items that you can inherit. It's really about they're going to be doing a lot of the things that are required. And you still have to do the things on your side as well, right? They have to screen their own staff on the back end. You have to screen your staff on the front end. So it's a lot. Yeah, you're going to be inheriting a lot of things.
And how do you get this information from the cloud provider, that what they're doing?
So that is one of the biggest difficulties right now with CMMC and compliance frameworks that require you to prove inheritance. Because there's 2 ways to verify a company is doing a requirement. One is you go to the company, you say, hi, let me in your front door, right? And show me how you do personnel screening. And while you're at it, can I actually see some records, right? Some of your personnel records, and let me see if you turned them down, if they had weird behavior, right? Cloud providers, the majority of them are going to say, go away, right? We do not need you as a customer if you want to come into our facility. The second way is you would have somebody else who you trust as an assessor, right, do the same check and then write an audit report saying, I personally went to this cloud provider, I checked these things, and I verified that they are good to go, right? And you say, okay, I trust that assessor, and they say that this cloud provider is okay. Therefore, I trust the cloud provider. And that's how business does it these days, right? So the most common is a SOC 2 report, which is done generally by an accounting firm, right? SOC 2 only checks a few things compared to CMMC requirements, which is tricky. So you can't really use a SOC 2 to replace CMMC. The other very common sort of assessment is FedRAMP, which there's been a lot of talk about in CMMC. And that one is, on the whole, almost entirely usable for a CMMC assessment inheritance, because FedRAMP includes almost every requirement that CMMC has.
Okay, so then if FedRAMP approves a cloud provider, then you're pretty good going with that cloud provider.
It is the safest bet.
Okay.
There's a lot more nuance to it. I hate to say, so the way CMMC is currently being designed is it's not reciprocity anymore. So, and we're kind of going way deep into this, so apologies. The concept of reciprocity is if a entity gets assessed against a certain standard, like FedRAMP or like SOC 2, then you can just say, if they pass that.
SteelRoot, a national leader in helping companies in the defense industrial base with CMMC preparation and federal cybersecurity regulations. Big or small, SteelRoot is here to help design, build, and manage IT. The SteelRoot reference architecture is a secure, cloud-native operating environment built on zero trust principles. SteelRoot also provides managed cybersecurity, IT, and virtual ISSO services. Visit steelroot.us for more information.
They're good to go, right? We don't need to look any further. And the way CMMC is going right now is that's not going to happen. The DoD apparently looked at it. There's been no reciprocity in 2 years. And the way it's described now is you need to look at it on a per practice level. So if the practice says, you do account identification and or say all the accounts need complex passwords, right? You have to have an assessment report saying that they verified that on the back end, all the accounts have complex passwords, right? Which not very many types of compliance frameworks check everything that CMMC has.
Okay, so this is a tough one then, is what I'm gathering from this. Okay, is each cybersecurity requirement either inherited or totally my responsibility to perform?
Almost always it's going to be partially inherited, which means you're going to have a responsibility on your side, and the external provider, which could be a cloud, it could be a managed services provider, will have their responsibility. If it's a cloud provider, you're almost always going to have, partial, where you do it and then they do it. If it's a managed services provider, it's much more likely to be either fully inherited from them or entirely your responsibility. So, for example, there's a requirement to do vulnerability scans, right? If the managed services provider is doing it, they're probably doing it entirely themselves, right? You don't have to do vulnerability scans. But if it's a cloud provider where, say, you've got Windows desktops that you are responsible for, and then they've got the cloud, say Box or Office 365 that they're responsible for, we would want to see that you're doing a vulnerability scan on your Windows laptops and they're doing a vulnerability scan on their cloud systems.
Okay. All right. Here we go. What proof do I need to show a CMMC assessor if I want to inherit a requirement?
An audit report. So there's a couple things which are standard practice. If you use a FedRAMP cloud provider, they will give you a very nice package of documentation if you request it, which will generally include a system security plan that describes how the cloud provider does each of these requirements. And it's also going to describe what your responsibility is as a customer, right? So it might say, we as a cloud provider, we screen our employees, but you're also responsible for screening your employees before you give them access. And a lot of times they'll also have a document called a customer responsibility matrix, which will say exactly, here's the things that you are responsible for as a customer if you use our service. Because even a FedRAMP cloud, which is generally considered very secure, you have to do some things. You might have to configure some settings for it to actually be considered fully secure.
Okay, that's a good point. So that would be when a company's not going to do that, an MSP is going to do that. And then also the good thing though is that they have all those reports ready to go, right? So that's a good thing. So
and I forgot to mention, you're going to want to get those reports, the full FedRAMP package if you use a FedRAMP solution, or any audit reports that are available if it's not. But in addition to that, your own system security plan should reiterate whose responsibilities, each item has. You might, for each practice, so remember a system security plan, you're going to list off each requirement and then talk about how you're doing each requirement, right? And it's generally going to be in sections. So you'll say, for for my Windows laptops, this is how I do it. And then the cloud provider does this part for their cloud. And I'm responsible for this part for the cloud too. So this is how I do that part, right? So it can get pretty lengthy for each requirement when you do inheritance.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Do we only have to inherit requirements at CMMC level 3, or does this also apply to level 1? Please, dear Lord, I hope the answer is no.
Bad news, guys.
Oh my goodness.
So there is no difference in the level of proof required between level 3 and level 1, which is a real concern for the defense contractors, because the level 1 guys have no idea that they have to do this, right? They're not even thinking about it. And I kind of touched on it. The only cloud providers right now that really have a good package that you can inherit from are the FedRAMP ones. And so level 1 companies, they don't have to use FedRAMP, right? And even level 3 doesn't have to use FedRAMP unless they have CUI in that cloud. But for the level 1, they might be using Yahoo for their email, or, just some random web host for their email. And there's not going to be audit reports available, right? And we still need to prove that that cloud host is doing the physical facility protections at the very least, right? So start thinking about that. See if you can verify that the cloud is doing at least the physical protection stuff. They're monitoring visitors. They're capturing who came in and out of the facility. They have their doors locked.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't think about their email, if it's like a Yahoo or a Gmail email kind of thing. So
the good news is those big guys like Yahoo and Gmail, they generally will have all this covered, right? That they have real data centers, which are probably state of the art. But when you start looking at the very cheap solutions where, the same person that does your website has your email, it can become impossible to prove.
So then maybe you switch your email to one of the bigger companies if you are doing that right now, if you have your email with your website. That's okay.
That is something to consider. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, this was very, very helpful information. I appreciate this tremendously. I'm sure everybody that's watching and listening is appreciating it too. Is there anything else you want to throw out there to add to this lovely concern?
We're all looking forward to seeing the DoD's clarification about DoD when they end radio silence, hopefully in the next month or two. And, if you don't mind me giving a little bit of props to myself and my company.
Yes, go right ahead.
I write the blog cmmcaudit.org, which is a free source of information. And my company is Curie Solutions, which is a C3PAO candidate. So thank you.
Perfect. So hopefully you'll hear about that too soon, right? You have any idea when?
Not sure when.
No. Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you very, very much. Congratulations again on your provisional instructor. That's exciting. And I appreciate you giving us the time.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye. This episode is brought to you by A3, a CMMC cloud-based collaborative environment for an organization seeking certification, otherwise known as an OSC, to build CMMC packages and share with a marketplace of consultant RPOs and assessor C3PAOs.